Alara felt the weight of Lily's skepticism and the quiet resentment from others who had worked their way up through the ranks for years. She knew she had to prove herself, not just as a designer, but as someone worthy of the unprecedented trust placed in her by Adrian Vance. She decided the best approach was to keep her head down, work diligently, and let her skills speak for themselves. But today, Adrian wasn't preparing for a hostile takeover or a high-stakes negotiation. He was preparing for a blind date, a test. Rather, a cynical smirk played on his lips as he surveyed the tattered, grease-stained clothes laid out on his pristine leather sofa. The disguise was perfect faded jeans, a threadbare hoodie, worn-out sneakers, and a grimy cap pulled low over his eyes. His jaw was deliberately unshaven, his usually manicured hands roughened with a few hours of digging in his garden. He'd even smeared a bit of dirt on his face. A touch of authenticity? Her first major project was a rebranding campaign for a newly acquired subsidiary, a task that required both creative vision and meticulous attention to detail. Alara threw herself into the work, often staying late, sketching ideas, experimenting with color palettes, and refining concepts. She wanted to prove to Adrian, and more importantly to herself, that she deserved this opportunity. He scoffed, thinking of the endless parade of socialites and gold diggers who had sought his attention over the years, their smiles as fake as their intentions. Every woman, in his jaded view, had an agenda. Love was a transaction, a means to an end. This blind date, arranged by his well-meaning but utterly deluded aunt, was the perfect opportunity to prove his theory. He would approach her as a beggar, a nobody, and watch her true colors emerge. He relished the thought of her inevitable disdain, the confirmation of his bleak worldview. Adrian Vance, meanwhile, maintained a professional distance. He didn't seek her out, nor did he avoid her. When they crossed paths in the hallways or in the executive lounge, he offered a polite nod or a brief formal greeting. Yet, Alara often caught his gaze on her from across a meeting room, or sensed his presence when she was deeply engrossed in her work. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible observation, but she felt it. The chosen restaurant, the Gilded Spoon, was an exclusive establishment known for its exorbitant prices and discreet clientele. It was a fitting backdrop for his experiment, a place where appearances were everything. Adrian had booked a table for two under a fake name, ensuring privacy for his little charade. He imagined his date, probably dripping in designer labels, arriving with an air of entitlement, ready to be impressed. He would shatter that illusion. From his glass-walled office, Adrian watched Alara. He didn't need to hover. Ms. Albright's daily reports kept him informed of her progress. He saw her dedication, the way she absorbed information, her thoughtful questions during team meetings. He noted the occasional frustrated frown that creased her brow when a design wasn't perfect, and the triumphant smile when she finally cracked a particularly challenging problem. He also noticed the wary glances from some of her colleagues, especially Lily. As the morning wore on, Alara made her way to the bus stop, clutching her worn handbag. The city buzzed around her, a symphony of hurried footsteps and distant sirens. She imagined her date perhaps a kind, quiet man, stable and understanding, someone who wouldn't judge her worn shoes or the anxious flutter in her stomach. A faint warmth spread through her chest at the thought. A new beginning. He knew his test had been unorthodox, perhaps even cruel. He had needed to see beyond the polished resumes and rehearsed interviews to gauge a person's true character when stripped of pretense. Alara's reaction in the alley, her unwavering compassion, had been a stark contrast to the self-serving opportunism he so often encountered. He had given her an opportunity, but he was also giving her a trial not of her skills, which were evident, but of her resilience, her ability to integrate, and her genuine impact on the corporate culture. Meanwhile, Adrian was already positioned. He sat on a cold, concrete bench in a narrow alleyway just around the corner from the Gilded Spoon, a carefully selected spot frequented by the very people he now pretended to be. He pulled his cap lower, observing the bustling street, waiting for his target. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were now deliberately dulled, devoid of the usual fire that commanded boardrooms. He watched the stream of well-dressed pedestrians, each seemingly rushing past, eyes averted, oblivious to the beggar in their midst. His heart, long hardened by betrayal and the cutthroat world of finance, felt a familiar, cold satisfaction. He was ready for the test. He was ready for her to fail. The brisk city air did little to cool the nervous flutter in Alara's stomach as she approached the vicinity of the Gilded Spoon. She smoothed down her dress, wishing she had something warmer, something that didn't feel quite so borrowed. The weight of her near-empty wallet pressed against her side, a constant, dull ache. Still, she walked with purpose, her gaze fixed on the elegant facade of the restaurant. One afternoon, Adrian overheard a snippet of conversation between Lily and another designer near the water cooler. "It's ridiculous," Lily scoffed, her voice low but clear. "Just because she gave the boss $3, she gets a senior role. Some of us have been working for years for this kind of recognition." Suddenly, a figure stumbled out of a narrow alleyway directly into her path. It was a man, hunched and disheveled, dressed in tattered clothes that seemed to cling to his gaunt frame. A grimy cap was pulled low, obscuring most of his face, but Alara caught a glimpse of dull, empty eyes. As he collided with her, a few coins scattered from his outstretched hand, clattering against the pavement. Adrian's jaw tightened. He knew such whispers would follow Alara, but hearing them solidified his resolve. Alara hadn't just given him $3, she had given him a glimpse of humanity when he had almost given up on finding it. She had passed a test no one else had even known they were taking. He had made a calculated risk by bringing her in this way, and he intended to see it through. He believed in Alara's potential, not just as a designer, but as a person. The question remained whether Alara could navigate the treacherous waters of corporate jealousy and prove her worth to everyone else. Alara's first few weeks at Vance Holdings were a relentless test of her resilience. The workload was demanding, pushing her creative and technical skills to their limits, but it was the subtle, insidious currents of workplace politics that truly drained her. The whispers persisted, evolving from quiet speculation to pointed, often sarcastic remarks about her fast track and special connection to Adrian Vance. Alara gasped, more out of concern than surprise. Her own financial woes made her acutely sensitive to the plight of others. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, her voice soft with genuine distress. She immediately knelt, not to pick up her own footing, but to help him gather the meager coins. Her fingers brushed against his, and she noticed how rough and surprisingly clean they were. Despite the dirt smudged on his face, Lily Chen was the orchestrator of this low-grade hostility. She never confronted Alara directly, but her actions spoke volumes. Projects Alara needed access to were sometimes accidentally locked. Crucial information was forgotten in team emails. During meetings, Lily would often interrupt Alara, subtly dismiss her ideas, or present similar concepts as her own, slightly rephrased. Her most common tactic was a thinly veiled compliment followed by a barbed remark. "That's a surprisingly good concept. Alara, considering your unique onboarding process." Adrian, still in his meticulously crafted disguise, watched her, astonished. He had anticipated a look of disgust, a hasty sidestep, perhaps even a sharp word. Instead, her eyes, though tired, were filled with a profound empathy that caught him off guard. She wasn't just helping him, she was looking at him as if he were a fellow human being, not an inconvenience. He mumbled a feigned apology, his voice deliberately hoarse. Alara tried to rise above it, focusing on her work, pouring every ounce of her talent into her designs. She aimed to deliver undeniable results, hoping that performance would silence the critics. She spent long hours meticulously perfecting her rebranding campaign for the subsidiary, knowing it was her chance to make a definitive statement. "Are you all right?" Alara asked, pressing a few of the collected coins back into his hand. Her brow was furrowed with worry. You look cold and hungry." She hesitated, her gaze drifting to her own worn handbag. She had exactly $3 left, enough for bus fare home and maybe a cheap packet of noodles. But looking at the man, a wave of profound sympathy washed over her. He looked truly desperate. One particularly stressful afternoon, Alara was finalizing a crucial presentation for the rebranding project, a presentation Adrian Vance himself was scheduled to attend. She had worked tirelessly on it, integrating cutting-edge visuals with a compelling narrative. Just as she was about to save the latest version, her computer screen flickered, then went black. A sickening lurch went through her stomach. She tried to restart it, but nothing happened. I haven't eaten properly in days, Adrian croaked, pushing his act to the extreme. He watched her intently, waiting for the inevitable withdrawal, the moment her self-preservation would kick in. This was the true test. Panic set in. She had backed up most of her files, but the most recent critical updates were still only on her desktop. Frantically, she called IT, who promised to send someone as soon as possible. But their estimated arrival time was perilously close to her presentation deadline. Ilara's heart twisted. The thought of someone starving, especially when she had even a little to spare, was unbearable. Her own hunger pang suddenly seemed insignificant. Without another thought, she unzipped her purse, retrieved the crumpled bills, and pressed them into his hand. All of it. Here, she said gently, her voice barely a whisper. Please get yourself something warm to eat. It's not much, but please. As she paced, a knot of dread tightening in her chest, Lily walked past her cubicle, a faint smirk playing on her lips. Trouble. Ilara. Looks like some people aren't cut out for the fast lane. Her words, delivered with feigned concern, felt like a deliberate jab. Adrian stared at the money in his palm, then at her. $3. Her last $3. He knew from his earlier reconnaissance. Her last penny. He had expected disdain, judgment, perhaps even fear. What he got was a raw, unadulterated act of kindness from someone who clearly had nothing to spare. His cynical smirk faltered. The cold satisfaction he had felt just moments ago evaporated, replaced by a strange, unfamiliar sensation. It felt like a tiny crack forming in the impenetrable fortress around his heart. Ilara ignored her, her mind racing for solutions. She couldn't just tell Adrian Vance her computer crashed. This was too important. Just then, Sarah Jenkins, her supervisor, approached, looking concerned. Everything all right, Ilara. I heard about your machine. You shouldn't, he managed, his voice now less of a croak, more of a genuine stammer. It's all right, I think, Ilara said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Just a minor setback. It's okay, Ilara insisted, offering a small, tired smile. Everyone deserves a hot meal, especially when it's cold like this. Just promise me you'll use it for food. She rose to her feet, her own stomach rumbling, but a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the weak coffee she'd had earlier. She had done a good thing. Sarah nodded. Look, I know this project means a lot. My office is free for the next hour if you want to use my computer to access your cloud backups and finish up. It has all the necessary software. As Ilara continued her walk toward the restaurant, Adrian remained frozen in the alleyway. The $3 clutched in his hand. The crisp bills felt heavier than any million-dollar contract he had ever signed. His elaborate test, designed to expose superficiality, had instead revealed a depth of compassion he hadn't believed existed. His carefully constructed worldview, built on years of bitter experience and distrust, was beginning to crumble around him. The blind date, it seemed, had already begun, and he was the one who was truly blind. Ilara hurried towards the gilded spoon, the warmth from her act of kindness a faint, comforting ember against the gnawing emptiness in her stomach. She was late, flustered, and now completely broke, but the image of the man in the alley had etched itself into her mind. She pushed through the heavy revolving door, her eyes scanning the opulent interior for her blind date. The maître d', a man with an impossibly stiff posture and a dismissive glance, approached her. Ilara's eyes lit up. Thank you, Sarah. That would be a lifesaver. Table for one, madam, he asked, his tone implying she was severely out of place. She quickly migrated to Sarah's office, heart still pounding, and began the frantic process of retrieving and reassembling her presentation. The delay was frustrating, but she refused to be defeated. As she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that the crash wasn't entirely accidental. A vague memory surfaced of Lily having briefly leaned over her desk that morning, admiring her screen. Could it be? The thought sent a chill down her spine. No, a reservation for, I believe it's under Vance. Ilara stammered, feeling a blush creep up her neck. Later that afternoon, the presentation began. Adrian Vance sat at the head of the conference table, his expression unreadable as Ilara presented her designs. She spoke with passion and conviction, explaining her concepts, the market research supporting her choices, and the potential impact on the subsidiary's future. Her visuals were stunning, the narrative compelling, and she answered questions with poise and confidence, even the challenging ones from a skeptical marketing executive. The maître d' raised a disdainful eyebrow. "Mr. Vance is already seated. This way." He led her through a maze of polished tables and hushed conversations, each setting more elaborate than the last. Her heart pounded, a mix of apprehension and faint excitement. Lily, seated among the team, watched Alara intently, her earlier smirk replaced by a tight, almost grim line. As Alara concluded, a quiet murmur of approval rippled through the room. Then she saw him. Adrian Vance leaned back, a faint, approving smile finally gracing his lips. "Alara," he said, his voice resonating with quiet authority. "Your work on this rebranding campaign is exceptional. You've captured the essence of the subsidiary's potential and presented a vision that is both innovative and strategically sound. This is precisely the kind of talent and foresight we value at Vance Holdings." Seated at a discreet, candlelit table in a secluded corner was the man from the alley. His cap was still pulled low, his tattered hoodie still clinging to his shoulders, but there was no mistaking the slump of his posture or the way his grimy hands rested on the pristine white tablecloth. Alara froze, a wave of confusion washing over her. The praise hung in the air, a resounding validation of Alara's efforts. Adrian's gaze swept over the room, lingering for a moment on Lily before returning to Alara. "Excellent work. Let's move forward with these concepts." "There you are, Mr. Vance," the maître d' announced, his voice surprisingly polite, given the man's appearance. He gestured for Alara to sit. After the meeting, as the room cleared, Adrian approached Alara. "A commendable presentation, Ms. Vance," he stated, his voice low, "and a testament to your ability to overcome unexpected obstacles." His eyes held a knowing glint, a subtle acknowledgement of the computer issue and perhaps more. Alara's mind reeled. "Mr. Vance? Was this some kind of terrible mistake? Had the maître d' misheard her, or was this her blind date? Her initial concern for the man quickly morphed into a profound sense of awkwardness and a growing unease. She glanced at the maître d', but he had already turned away, seemingly unfazed by the discrepancy. Alara met his gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them. She knew he wasn't just talking about the technical glitch. He had seen the web of envy, and he was making it clear that he recognized her struggles and, more importantly, her triumph. The weight of proving herself still lingered, but for the first time since starting, Alara felt a deeper sense of belonging, a quiet assurance that, despite the challenges, she was exactly where she was meant to be. The battle for acceptance was far from over, but she had just won a significant skirmish. Weeks turned into months, and Alara found a rhythm at Vance Holdings. The initial whispers about her special entry faded, as her consistent performance spoke louder than any gossip. She proved herself invaluable, bringing fresh perspectives and a keen eye for design that revitalized several stagnant campaigns. Her relationship with Sarah Jenkins blossomed into one of mutual respect and camaraderie. Sarah became a quiet ally, offering guidance and a shield against the residual corporate chill. Taking a deep breath, Alara slid into the chair opposite him, trying to compose herself. "Excuse me," she began, her voice tentative. "There must be a misunderstanding. I'm Alara. I'm here for a blind date. My date's name is Vance." She paused, her eyes searching his obscured face. Are you Mr. Vance?" The words felt absurd as they left her lips. Adrian Vance, though still maintaining a professional demeanor, began to interact with Alara more frequently. Their conversations extended beyond project updates, delving into discussions about design philosophy, industry trends, and even, occasionally, the social impact of technology. Alara found herself drawn to his sharp intellect and unexpected depth. He wasn't just a ruthless CEO. There was a thoughtful, almost introspective side to him that she hadn't anticipated. He listened intently, challenged her ideas constructively, and often surprised her with his insightful observations. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. His voice, when he finally spoke, was the same rough croak she'd heard in the alley. "Pleasure to meet you. Alara, Adrian Vance. Though most folks call me Adrian." He extended a hand that seemed too clean for his attire. A small detail Alara's mind vaguely registered through her confusion. Lily Chen, however, remained a persistent shadow. Her subtle undermining tactics continued, though they became less effective as Alara built stronger alliances and gained more confidence. Lily's frustration was palpable. She'd expected Alara to falter, to be exposed as an undeserving hire, but instead, Alara thrived. Alara stared at his hand for a moment before weakly shaking it. It was firm, despite its apparent grime. This couldn't be right. Her friend had described her date as successful and well-established. This man, despite the maître d's deference, looked anything but. Had her friend set her up as a joke? Or was this some kind of elaborate prank? One crisp autumn evening, as Alara was packing up to leave, her phone buzzed with an incoming email. It was from Adrian Vance. Her eyebrows raised in surprise. He rarely emailed after business hours unless it was urgent. I don't understand, Alara said, pulling her hand back. Are you all right? You were just in the alley. The subject line read, Invitation Vance Holdings Annual Gala. Adrian feigned a look of mild surprise. Oh, just a bit of a rough morning. Lost my wallet. You see, had to make do. He gestured vaguely at his clothes. His eyes, though mostly hidden, seemed to flicker with something she couldn't quite decipher, a spark of challenge. Alara opened it. The email was a formal invitation to the company's prestigious annual gala, an event notorious for being a high society affair where business deals were subtly forged and the company's elite gathered. What surprised her even more was a personal note appended below the formal text. Alara's bewilderment only deepened. A wealthy, successful man who had to make do by begging in an alley. It didn't add up. Yet, there he was, sitting at her table in one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. She felt a knot of dread forming in her stomach, a premonition that this evening was going to be far more complicated than she had ever imagined. The test, for Adrian, had just begun its second, more insidious phase. For Alara, it was turning into a waking nightmare. Alara sat across from Adrian, the exquisite silverware feeling heavy in her hand, the soft lighting of the gilded spoon doing little to alleviate the surreal atmosphere. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, none of which she dared voice. Was this some elaborate joke? Was he truly destitute, yet somehow able to afford this lavish meal? Or was he testing her? The last thought made her recoil, yet it lingered stubbornly. Despite her profound discomfort and the gnawing hunger that had been temporarily forgotten, a strange sense of politeness, perhaps even a sliver of curiosity, kept her rooted to her seat. Miss Vance, so, Alara, Adrian's voice, still slightly rough, broke the silence. He had picked up the menu, his eyes scanning the exorbitant prices with a feigned nonchalance. Don't hold back. Order anything you like, though I might have to wash dishes to cover the bill if you go too wild. A hint of a smile, fleeting and almost imperceptible, played on his lips. I understand this is a formal company event, but I would be honored if you would consider attending as my personal guest. Your contributions to Vance Holdings, especially in the last few months, have been significant, and I believe it's time you were properly recognized in a setting that reflects your growing importance to the company. Please consider it. Alara's eyes widened slightly. The menu alone was intimidating. She usually budgeted for rice and beans, not roasted duck with truffle sauce. Oh, no, please, she quickly demurred, her cheeks flushing. Just something simple, perhaps a salad or a pasta dish. She was acutely aware that she'd just given away her last $3. The irony was almost unbearable. Adrian Vance. Adrian observed her carefully. He noted her modesty, her genuine reluctance to impose. It was a stark contrast to the aggressive assertiveness he usually encountered. Nonsense, he insisted, though his tone was still playful, almost challenging. Tonight, you feast. After all, it's not every day a man finds himself in my predicament. He gestured vaguely at his attire. Tell me, Alara, what do you do? What brings you to this interesting establishment? Alara reread the last paragraph several times. Personal guest. The words echoed in her mind. It was an unprecedented gesture. CEOs rarely brought personal guests to such events unless they were family or very close associates. Was this another test, or something else entirely? Alara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. She certainly wasn't going to mention her friend's optimistic but clearly misguided arrangement. I'm a freelance graphic designer, she explained, her voice softening as she spoke of her passion. It's challenging. Work can be inconsistent, but I love it. She didn't elaborate on the struggles, the late nights, the constant worry. She wouldn't complain, not to a stranger, and certainly not to this enigma of a man. Her mind immediately went to Lily Chen. The thought of walking into such an event on Adrian Vance's arm, even if purely professional, would undoubtedly ignite a fresh wave of speculation and resentment. She considered declining. The idea of navigating a room full of powerful, scrutinizing eyes while standing next to the enigmatic CEO filled her with a familiar dread. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his hidden eyes seemingly piercing through her. Challenging, you say, he mused. So you know what it's like to struggle to live paycheck to paycheck, perhaps even worry about where your next meal comes from. He watched her intently, his question a deliberate probe into her resilience and honesty. But then she remembered the alley, the cold, the way Adrian had looked so utterly defeated. She remembered his vulnerability and her own instinctive desire to help. She thought of the life-changing opportunity he had given her, the trust he had placed in her when no one else would. This wasn't just about a job, it was about a connection, forged in an unlikely moment of kindness, and perhaps it was also about showing everyone, including Lily, that Adrian Vance truly valued merit, regardless of its unconventional origins. A pang of embarrassment, quickly replaced by a quiet defiance, shot through Alara. She met his gaze, unflinching. Yes, Adrian, she said softly, but firmly. I do. I know exactly what that's like. But I believe in hard work, and I believe that things will get better. You just have to keep going. Right. She offered him a small, genuine smile, a testament to her unwavering optimism. After a long internal debate, a resolute calm settled over her. She took a deep breath and began to type her reply. His act had been designed to elicit pity, or perhaps scorn. Instead, he found himself listening, captivated by her quiet strength. Her words were not a plea for sympathy, but a declaration of unwavering spirit. He had expected her to complain, to hint at her own misfortunes in hopes of gaining his imagined favor. Instead, she radiated a calm dignity. Mr. Vance, as the evening progressed, Adrian continued his subtle interrogation, weaving questions about her background, her dreams, and her views on money and success into their conversation. He spoke vaguely of his own failures, of being down on his luck, observing her every reaction. Alara, despite the growing surrealism of the date, responded with unwavering honesty and kindness. She shared small anecdotes about her daily life, her aspirations for a small design studio, and her simple pleasures. She never once complained about her financial difficulties, never hinted at his strange appearance, and never asked him about his true circumstances. She simply treated him as a person, a man, regardless of his tattered clothes or cryptic remarks. Thank you for the invitation. I would be delighted to attend the Vance Holdings annual gala as your guest. With each genuine, empathetic response, a tiny fissure appeared in Adrian's hardened facade. The cynical amusement he had felt at the beginning of the evening was slowly being replaced by something entirely unexpected: respect. He, Adrian Vance, the ruthless CEO who trusted no one, was beginning to feel a profound admiration for this woman who saw beyond the disguise, beyond the pretense, and into the heart of another human being. His test was yielding results, but not the ones he had so coldly anticipated. The walls he had built around himself, brick by painful brick, were starting to tremble. The dinner concluded, leaving Alara with a strange cocktail of relief and lingering confusion. Adrian, despite his appearance, had been surprisingly engaging, his questions probing yet somehow never invasive. He possessed a sharp wit, and beneath the gruff exterior, she sensed an intelligence that belied his current state. He insisted on paying the exorbitant bill, producing a credit card that, to Alara's bewildered eyes, looked perfectly normal despite his earlier claims of destitution. The maitre d' had processed it without a flicker of surprise, which only deepened her befuddlement. Sincerely, as they stepped out of the gilded spoon into the cool night air, Adrian turned to her, his hidden gaze seemingly weighing her. "Thank you, Alara," he said, his voice dropping some of its theatrical roughness, a hint of genuine softness emerging. Tonight was enlightening. Alara Vance. Alara hugged her arms around herself, the cold air seeping into her thin dress. I'm glad. she replied, still unsure what to make of the entire evening. I hope things turn around for you, Adrian. The words felt inadequate, almost naive. Given the circumstances, she hit send, a quiet ripple of excitement and apprehension coursing through her. The gala was less than 2 weeks away. It wouldn't just be an event, it would be a statement. And Ilara, for the first time, felt ready to make it. She knew this evening would be pivotal, an opportunity to truly cement her place, or perhaps, to discover something even more profound about her relationship with Adrian Vance. The 2 weeks leading up to the Vance Holdings annual gala were a blur of nervous anticipation for Ilara. She'd never attended an event of such grandeur, let alone as the personal guest of a high-profile CEO. The pressure felt immense, not just to look the part, but to navigate the intricate social dance of the corporate elite. Sarah Jenkins, ever supportive, offered advice on etiquette and even helped her pick out a stunning, yet understated, navy blue gown that made Ilara feel elegant and confident. Adrian chuckled, a low, rich sound that was utterly out of character for the beggar he portrayed. Oh, they will, he assured her, then hesitated. Listen, Ilara, I owe you. Not just for the $3, which, believe me, meant more than you know, but for your kindness. I want to help you. On the night of the gala, the grand ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel shimmered under the opulent chandeliers. A symphony orchestra played softly in the background, their melodies weaving through the hum of sophisticated conversations and the clinking of crystal glasses. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfumes and the unspoken ambition of hundreds of power players. Ilara frowned, taken aback. Help me. How? She immediately thought of her empty bank account, the overdue bills, the precarious state of her freelance career, but her pride bristled at the thought of accepting charity from this mysterious man. Ilara arrived punctually, her heart fluttering like a trapped bird. As she stepped out of the private car arranged by Adrian, he was there, waiting. He looked impeccably handsome in a tailored tuxedo, a vision of effortless authority. His gaze swept over her, a flicker of genuine admiration in his eyes. Ilara, he said, his voice a low rumble. You look remarkable. You said you're a graphic designer, Adrian continued, ignoring her hesitation. I know someone who's looking for talent, big project, good pay. Interested? He pulled out a sleek, modern smartphone, a stark contrast to his attire, and quickly typed something. Here, he said, holding it out. It's my assistant's number. Call her tomorrow. Tell her Adrian sent you. She'll set up an interview. A blush crept up Ilara's neck. You look quite dapper yourself, Mr. Vance, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Ilara stared at the phone, then at his face, still partially obscured by the cap. This was too much. The beggar, the CEO-like credit card, the sudden job offer from a friend who happened to need a graphic designer for a big project. It felt like a dream, or a very elaborate con. Adrian, I don't understand, she admitted, her voice laced with suspicion. Who exactly are you? Adrian offered her his arm, a gesture that sent a jolt of nervous excitement through her. Shall we? He murmured, guiding her into the throng of guests. Adrian finally removed his cap, revealing a face that was strikingly handsome, though etched with a certain weariness around the eyes. His dark, neatly combed hair and piercing blue eyes were a far cry from the disheveled figure she had encountered earlier. The transformation was startling. His clothes were still rumpled, but now she saw them for what they were, an expensive, albeit deliberately distressed, ensemble. Their entrance did not go unnoticed, as Adrian Vance, the city's most elusive and powerful bachelor, walked in with an unfamiliar, stunning woman on his arm. A hush fell over certain sections of the room. Heads turned, conversations paused, and eyes, hundreds of them, swiveled towards them. Ilara felt the weight of every gaze, a mix of curiosity, speculation, and thinly veiled envy. She held her head high, drawing strength from the steady, comforting presence of Adrian's hand on her arm. My real name is Adrian Vance, he said, his voice now crisp, authoritative, completely devoid of the beggar's croak. And I am the CEO of Vance Holdings. He watched her reaction, a flicker of apprehension in his gaze. This was the moment of truth. Among the crowd, Ilara spotted Lily Chen, standing with a group of designers, Lily's eyes, usually cool and composed, widened slightly in disbelief, then narrowed into a furious glare. A whisper, sharp and venomous, seemed to emanate from her direction. Though Ilara couldn't make out the words, it was clear Lily had not anticipated this. Ilara gasped, taking a step back. Vance Holdings. The name echoed in her mind. It was one of the largest, most powerful conglomerates in the city, with interests in technology, real estate, and media. The man standing before her, the man she had just given her last $3 to, the man she had believed was down on his luck, was a titan of industry. A cold wave of realization washed over her, quickly followed by a searing blush of humiliation. He had tricked her. He had tested her. And she had fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. The warmth she'd felt earlier turned to ice. Adrian, ever the master of the room, navigated the crowd with practiced ease, introducing Ilara to key figures, influential clients, potential investors, and long-standing business partners. He introduced her simply as Ilara Vance, our brilliant new senior designer. Each introduction was brief, yet Adrian's tone carried an unmistakable weight of respect and pride. He subtly emphasized her integral role in recent successes, giving her credibility and deflecting any immediate questions about her background. You were pretending," she whispered, her voice trembling, not with fear, but with a profound sense of betrayal. The alley, the clothes, the stories. It was all a lie, a test. Her eyes, once full of empathy, now blazed with a mix of hurt and righteous anger. "And I gave you my last $3, believing you needed it." The irony, this time, was truly unbearable. The word test hung in the cool night air between them. A barbed wire fence suddenly erected where moments before there had been a fragile bridge of empathy. Ilara's face, which had been soft with concern just moments ago, hardened into a mask of pure indignation. Her eyes, usually gentle, now flashed with a fiery resolve. The chill of the evening was nothing compared to the icy betrayal that gripped her heart. As the evening progressed, Ilara found her initial nervousness slowly giving way to a surprising sense of ease. Adrian was a gracious host, ensuring she was never left alone, seamlessly weaving her into conversations, and even sharing a few dry, witty observations about the peculiarities of high society. He made her feel included, valued, and, against all odds, comfortable. "A test," Ilara repeated, her voice rising, barely a whisper yet filled with a potent fury. "You humiliated me. You made me believe you were suffering, that you were genuinely in need, only to, see if I was worthy," she scoffed. A harsh, humorless sound. "I gave you the last of my money, Adrian. My last $3. Not because I was trying to impress a CEO, but because I thought you were a human being in distress." During a lull in the networking, Adrian led her to a quiet corner near a large window overlooking the city lights. "Are you enjoying yourself, Ilara?" he asked, his voice softer than she'd heard it in the office. Adrian flinched, the sharpness of her words piercing through his practiced detachment. He had anticipated anger, perhaps even a tearful accusation, but not this raw, visceral outrage. He saw the genuine hurt in her eyes, and a wave of profound regret washed over him. His elaborate scheme, designed to protect his own scarred heart, had just inflicted pain on the one person who had shown him unsolicited kindness. "More than I expected, Mr. Vance," she confessed, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's quite an experience." "Ilara, please," he began, his voice devoid of the earlier playfulness or the beggar's croak. It was a plea, almost. It wasn't meant to humiliate you. It was a desperate measure, to find someone real. He reached out a hand, but she recoiled, shrinking away as if he were toxic. He chuckled. "It is, indeed, a necessary one. Sometimes. But I wanted you here tonight for more than just appearances. You deserve to be recognized for your talent and your character. It's important that everyone sees that." His eyes held hers, a deep, genuine sincerity that made her heart skip a beat. "Real?" she shot back, her voice trembling but gaining strength. "You want real? This is real, Adrian. This feeling right now. This is real betrayal. You judged me, tricked me, and then expected thank you for revealing your true, arrogant self." She pulled her arms around herself, trying to shield her wounded dignity. I don't care who you are. CEO, Beggar. It doesn't change what you did. You used me. Suddenly, a booming voice cut through the quiet. Adrian, my boy. And who is this lovely lady? The accusation struck him hard. He had used her. In his cynical quest for authenticity, he had inadvertently trampled on the very thing he sought. You're right, Adrian conceded, his gaze dropping from her furious eyes to the polished cobblestones beneath their feet. I did, and I am truly sorry. Ilara. More sorry than you can imagine. He paused, gathering his thoughts, trying to articulate the labyrinthine reasons behind his actions. Reasons that even now felt flimsy in the face of her justifiable anger. It was Mr. Thompson, a longtime board member, known for his jovial but sometimes overly familiar nature. He was a man who enjoyed a good story, and his gaze was particularly keen on Ilara. My life, he started, looking up at her again, his eyes revealing a vulnerability she hadn't seen before, has been filled with people who only saw my money. Every relationship, every friendship, every person who ever claimed to care about me. Eventually, they all revealed their true colors. They wanted something. My last blind date, the reason I even came up with this ridiculous test, was with a woman who spent the entire evening subtly trying to find out my net worth, asking about my properties, hinting at designer bags. He sighed, a deep, weary sound. I became jaded. Ilara. I stopped trusting. I stopped believing genuine kindness existed without an ulterior motive. Adrian introduced them, and Mr. Thompson beamed. Ilara Vance. Yes, I've heard whispers. They say you're quite the find. A real rags-to-riches story, aren't you? My dear. Heard you even bought Adrian a cup of coffee when he was down on his luck. He laughed heartily, his eyes twinkling. He took a step closer, his hands held open in a gesture of surrender. The test in the alley. It was impulsive. I was at my breaking point. I just wanted to see, for once, if someone, anyone, would help without knowing who I was, without expecting anything in return. And you did. You didn't hesitate. You didn't ask questions. You just gave. And when you walked away, you didn't look back. Ilara felt a hot flush crawl up her cheeks. The $3 story. It hadn't surfaced widely, but apparently it had reached the ears of the board. She glanced at Adrian, mortified. Ilara listened, her anger warring with a nascent, unwelcome understanding. She could see the weariness in his eyes now, the genuine pain behind the authoritative facade. It didn't excuse his actions, but it explained them. The cynicism he described was a dark mirror of her own struggles with distrust, albeit born from vastly different experiences. Still, the humiliation burned. But Adrian, instead of looking embarrassed, simply smiled. Indeed, Mr. Thompson, he said smoothly, placing a reassuring hand on Ilara's lower back. Ilara has a generosity of spirit that few possess, and that $3 coffee was perhaps the most valuable investment I've ever made. It showed me integrity when I was looking for it most. So that job offer, she said, her voice still sharp, is that your apology? Your way of buying off my anger? His words were a quiet declaration, a defense of her character and a subtle warning to anyone who might wish to diminish her. Ilara looked at him, surprised and touched. He wasn't ashamed of their unconventional meeting. He embraced it, saw it as a testament to her worth. In that moment, surrounded by the glittering facade of wealth and power, Ilara realized that Adrian Vance wasn't just acknowledging her contributions to his company, he was acknowledging her as a person, validating her kindness, and subtly, yet powerfully, silencing the murmurs of doubt. The gala was proving to be far more than just a social event. It was a revelation of their evolving connection. The Vance Holdings annual gala became a turning point for Ilara. The public acknowledgement from Adrian, his quiet defense against Mr. Thompson's well-meaning but prying questions, and the undeniable chemistry that had sparked between them, transformed her standing within the company. The whispers about her special connection no longer felt like accusations, but rather confirmations of a bond that was becoming increasingly undeniable. Adrian shook his head, his expression earnest. No, it's an opportunity. A genuine one. You impressed me. Ilara. Not just with your kindness, but with your spirit, your integrity. I need people like you at Vance Holdings. People who are honest, resilient, who see things differently. I saw your portfolio online after you mentioned your work. It's brilliant. This isn't charity. This is me offering a position based on merit, but accelerated because I know your character now. In a way, I could never know someone from a resume. In the weeks following the gala, Ilara and Adrian's professional interactions subtly shifted. Their discussions grew more personal, lingering beyond the scope of work. He would often seek her out, not just for updates on projects, but to discuss broader ideas, or simply to share a moment of quiet reflection over a cup of coffee in his executive office. Ilara found herself learning more about the intricacies of his business empire, but also glimpses into the man behind the CEO facade. He spoke of his vision for the company, his desire to create lasting impact, and even, occasionally, the loneliness that came with immense responsibility. He extended his hand towards her again, this time holding the smartphone with his assistant's number. His gaze was steady, unwavering. I hurt you, Ilara. I know that, and I regret it deeply. But please, don't let my flaws blind you to a chance to change your own circumstances. Call the number. Give me a chance to prove that my intentions are truly good. Now that the test is over, yet, despite this growing closeness, a wall remained. Adrian was still meticulously guarded about his past, especially the period leading up to their first encounter. Ilara, out of respect, never directly questioned him, but the mystery gnawed at her. Who was Adrian Vance before he became the powerful CEO, and what had truly driven him to that alley? She found herself falling for him, not just the successful magnate, but the complex, thoughtful man who had seen something in her when no one else had. But her feelings were tangled with uncertainty, a fear that she was just another part of his grand plan. Another test completed, Ilara stared at the phone, then at Adrian, the complex man who stood before her. The anger still simmered, but a tiny seed of doubt had been planted. Could she trust him? Could she forgive such a deception? More importantly, could she afford to turn away from an opportunity that could be the answer to all her prayers? The streetlights cast long shadows around them, illuminating the invisible battle raging within her. Ilara walked home under the flickering streetlights, the crisp night air doing little to cool the fire raging inside her. Her mind was a battlefield, pride clashing with pragmatism, betrayal warring with a desperate sliver of hope. Adrian Vance, CEO of Vance Holdings. The name itself felt like a punch to the gut. The elaborate deception, the calculated test. It all replayed in her mind, each moment a fresh sting of humiliation. How could she have been so naive? How could she have fallen for such a transparent trick? Meanwhile, Lily Chen's hostility, which had festered quietly, now erupted. The gala had pushed her over the edge. Her carefully constructed facade of professional disdain crumbled, revealing raw, unbridled envy. She saw Ilara as an undeserving rival, someone who had bypassed years of diligent effort through sheer luck and, in Lily's twisted perception, manipulation. Yet, beneath the burning anger, a different thought gnawed at her. An opportunity. A genuine opportunity at Vance Holdings. The company was a behemoth, a titan. A position there could change her life, lift her out of the constant struggle, allow her to finally pursue her dreams without the suffocating weight of financial anxiety. Could she afford to let her pride, however justified, stand in the way of her future? One afternoon, Ilara discovered a critical part of her current project. A meticulously crafted market analysis report, missing from her secure cloud drive. She checked all her folders, her local backups, but it was nowhere to be found. A cold dread settled in her stomach. This was too specific, too targeted to be an accident. She unlocked the door to her small, sparsely furnished apartment, the silence amplifying her internal turmoil. The first thing she did was call Chloe, her best friend and the unwitting orchestrator of this disastrous blind date. As she frantically searched, an anonymous email landed in Sarah Jenkins's inbox, accusing Ilara of plagiarism in her previous successful rebranding campaign. The email detailed specific phrases and concepts, carefully picked out from obscure, unrelated online articles, presenting them as if Ilara had copied them directly. The accusation, though flimsy, was designed to sow seeds of doubt, leveraging the lingering resentment against Ilara. "You will not believe what happened," Ilara began, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. As soon as Chloe answered, she recounted the entire evening, the alley, the dinner, Adrian's bizarre claims, and then the shocking revelation. She didn't spare any details, pouring out her anger and confusion. Sarah, a woman of integrity, immediately brought the email to Ilara, her expression a mix of concern and protectiveness. Ilara, I know this is nonsense, but we need to address it. This looks like a smear campaign. Chloe listened patiently, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced by stunned silence. When Ilara finally finished, there was a long pause. Okay, Chloe said slowly. So, let me get this straight. The homeless guy was actually the Adrian Vance-like, the billionaire Adrian Vance. Ilara's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about professional rivalry. It was an attempt to destroy her career, to question her very integrity. She knew instantly who was behind it. Lily Chen. Yes, Chloe. The very one, Ilara exclaimed, pacing her tiny living room. He said it was a test to see if I was real. Can you even imagine the audacity? I know who did this. Sarah, Ilara said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and despair. And I know where it comes from. It's Lily. The audacity is off the charts. I'll give you that, Chloe conceded. But did he really offer you a job at Vance Holdings? A real job? Not just, a pity donation? Sarah sighed, her gaze hardening. I suspected as much. But suspicion isn't proof. We need to find hard evidence. This is serious. Ilara stopped pacing. He said it was a genuine opportunity. He saw my portfolio online. Apparently, said I impressed him with my kindness and integrity. He wants me to call his assistant tomorrow. The next few days were a blur of frantic activity. Ilara and Sarah worked together, meticulously tracing digital footprints, examining server logs, and comparing timestamps. They found anomalies: a login from an unfamiliar IP address at a time when Lily was known to be in the office, a brief deletion of files before their restoration. The evidence was circumstantial, but it was mounting. Another pause from Chloe, then a sharp intake of breath. Ilara, think about this. This is huge. I mean, yes, he was a total jerk for the test thing. Absolutely. But what if he's being honest now? What if he really does see something in you beyond your $3? Lily, oblivious to their investigation, grew bolder. She started openly making snide comments in front of other colleagues, casting doubt on Ilara's every achievement. Amazing how quickly some people climb the ladder. Isn't it must be all that networking? He humiliated me. Chloe, he made a fool out of me. The culmination came during a routine team meeting. Lily, seemingly casual, brought up a minor error in one of Ilara's earlier reports, blowing it out of proportion. Perhaps some people aren't as detail-oriented as they appear, she sneered, her eyes fixed on Ilara. I get it. I really do, Chloe said, her voice firm but gentle. And he should grovel. But Ilara, you've been struggling for so long. This isn't just any job. This is Vance Holdings. This could be your break. Your big break. Are you really going to let your anger, however deserved, stop you from pursuing something that could change everything? Ilara felt a surge of indignation. She had endured the whispers, the passive aggression, but this blatant attack was too much. She took a deep breath, ready to confront Lily head-on. When Adrian Vance, who had been quietly observing the exchange, spoke, Ilara sank onto her worn sofa, staring at the peeling paint on the opposite wall. Chloe was right. It wasn't about Adrian Vance. Not entirely. It was about Ilara's own future. She had endured countless rejections, endless struggles, all while clinging to the hope that her talent would eventually be recognized. Here was a chance, handed to her by the most unconventional, infuriating, yet undeniably influential man she had ever met. Ms. Chen? His voice was calm, almost dangerously so. I believe Ms. Vance's work has consistently exceeded expectations. Perhaps we should focus on the quality of our collective output rather than indulging in unproductive speculation. His gaze was unwavering, piercing. She spent the rest of the night tossing and turning, sleep evading her as she replayed every detail of the evening. Adrian's hardened eyes, then the flicker of weariness, his rough voice, then the authoritative tone, the deception, then the seemingly sincere apology. Could a man who had gone to such lengths to test someone genuinely be looking for an honest connection? Was his cynicism so deep that this was the only way he knew how to find truth? Lily recoiled, her face paling. The subtle venom she usually exuded seemed to evaporate under the CEO's direct disapproval. By morning, the anger had dulled to a weary ache, replaced by a cautious curiosity. She still felt the sting of betrayal, but the practical side of her, the resilient part that had kept her going through years of hardship, began to assert itself. This wasn't about him. This was about her. After the meeting, Adrian called Alara into his office. He held a tablet in his hand, his expression unreadable. "Alara," he began, "I've been made aware of certain difficulties you've been facing, and I've seen the report you and Ms. Jenkins compiled." His eyes met hers. A silent question. "Are you prepared to press charges? This kind of malicious behavior cannot be tolerated at Vance Holdings." With a deep breath and a trembling hand, Alara picked up her phone. She looked at the number Adrian had given her, still saved from the previous night. It felt heavy, like a portal to another life. A leap of faith, perhaps, or, as her cynical side warned, a fool's errand. She closed her eyes, took another bracing breath, and pressed dial. The phone felt impossibly heavy in Alara's trembling hand. Each digit she pressed felt like a step further into an unknown, treacherous landscape. What if this was all a joke? What if Adrian Vance was just playing with her? Her stomach churned with a mixture of apprehension and a reluctant, undeniable flicker of hope. She pressed the last digit and held her breath. Alara looked at the evidence Adrian was referring to. A detailed account of Lily's digital sabotage. The proof was now undeniable. She could have Lily fired, perhaps even face legal repercussions. The thought of justice was appealing, but a deeper part of her hesitated. Was this the kind of person she wanted to be? One who retaliated with cold, corporate vengeance? Vance Holdings, a crisp, perfectly modulated voice answered. "Ms. Albright, speaking. How may I direct your call?" The voice was as smooth and polished as the exterior of the Vance Holdings skyscraper. She thought of the alley, of the beggar she had helped, of the unexpected kindness that had transformed her life. She looked at Adrian, the man who had orchestrated this elaborate test, who had given her a chance, and who was now offering her the power to exact retribution. But what kind of resolution would truly bring her peace? The answer, she realized, lay not in destroying Lily, but in proving that kindness, integrity, and genuine talent could overcome any obstacle, even the most insidious forms of malice. The path forward was clear, but it would require a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Alara stood in Adrian's office, the weight of the tablet in his hand feeling heavier than any design brief she'd ever handled. The evidence against Lily Chen was conclusive, a digital trail leading directly to her, confirming her malicious intent. Adrian's steady gaze offered her a choice: an official reprimand, termination, perhaps even legal action. It was the power to inflict the same kind of pain Lily had tried to inflict on her. Yes, Alara stammered, surprised by the swift professionalism. "My name is Alara Vance, Adrian Vance. He suggested I call you about a graphic design position." She felt foolish even saying it, half expecting Miss Albright to burst out laughing. She looked at Adrian, the man who had seen her at her lowest, who had challenged her, nurtured her talent, and now entrusted her with this decision. His presence was a silent testament to the journey they had shared, a journey that began with a simple act of kindness in a desolate alley. There was a brief, almost imperceptible pause on the other end. Yes, Ms. Vance. Mr. Vance informed me you'd be in touch." Ms. Albright's tone remained utterly composed, betraying no surprise or hint of the unusual circumstances. "He mentioned your impressive portfolio. I have a slot for you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Does that work for you?" "Mr. Vance," Alara began, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention and giving me the choice, but I don't want to press charges against Lily." Alara blinked. So, he had actually told his assistant. This was real. The sheer efficiency of it was staggering. "Yes," she managed, her voice a little steadier now. "Yes, 9 a.m. is perfect." Adrian's eyebrows subtly rose, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Are you certain, Alara? This is a serious breach of professional conduct. It undermines the integrity of our team, and frankly, it was a direct attack on you." Excellent, Ms. Albright replied. The address is 1000 Corporate Way, Vance Tower. Please ask for me at reception. I'll arrange your visitor pass. Do you have any questions, Ms. Vance? I am, she affirmed, meeting his gaze. Retaliation won't bring me peace. Mr. Vance, it won't prove anything to Lily, except that malice breeds more malice. What I want is for her to understand that true talent and hard work will always shine. Regardless of the shadows people try to cast, I want justice, but not vengeance. No, that's fine, Alara said quickly, still reeling. Thank you. Adrian studied her for a long moment, a slow, gentle smile spreading across his face. Just as I thought, he murmured, almost to himself. You truly are remarkable, Alara. He placed the tablet down. Very well. I will handle Lily Chen. It will be a private matter. But rest assured, she will understand the gravity of her actions and that such behavior has no place at Vance Holdings. Very good. We look forward to seeing you then. The line clicked, and Alara slowly lowered the phone, her mind racing. It was happening. She had an interview at Vance Holdings. The anger over Adrian's deception was still a bitter taste in her mouth, but it was now overshadowed by the monumental weight of this opportunity. Alara felt a wave of relief wash over her. She knew Adrian would handle it justly. With the quiet authority that defined him, the rest of the day was a blur of frantic preparation. She pulled out her battered laptop, reviewing her digital portfolio. Every pixel, every design choice, every project she had poured her heart into, now felt under intense scrutiny. She reorganized her files, polished her strongest pieces, and mentally rehearsed answers to potential interview questions. Why Vance Holdings? What are your strengths? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And, Adrian continued, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper, there's something else I need to tell you, Alara. Something that has been long overdue. He paused, a vulnerability in his eyes she hadn't seen since that first night. The truth about the alley? Sleep that night was fitful. Her dreams were a chaotic mix of Adrian as the disheveled beggar and the formidable CEO, of herself handing over the $3, of Ms. Albright's impossibly calm voice. She woke before dawn, a nervous energy buzzing through her veins. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the secret she had so desperately wanted to uncover. Choosing her outfit was a challenge. She had few professional clothes, and certainly nothing that would scream Vance Holdings material. She settled on her cleanest, most presentable black trousers and a simple white blouse, ironing them meticulously until they were crisp. She pulled her hair back neatly and applied minimal makeup. She wanted to look capable, serious, and not at all like the woman he had tested. That night, he began, his voice tinged with a raw honesty, was not a test. Not entirely. My father had just passed away, and his will was complicated. It became clear that the board, some of whom were longtime rivals, were planning a hostile takeover. They saw my grief as weakness. I had lost everything, or so it felt. My father, the company my family built, my reputation. I was at rock bottom, trying to escape the prying eyes, the betrayal. I walked out of a meeting, utterly defeated, and ended up in that alley. I was genuinely lost, genuinely broken. As she stepped out onto the bustling city streets, the morning sun glinting off the glass facades of the skyscrapers, Alara felt a renewed surge of both determination and dread. The Vance Tower loomed ahead, a monolith of power and success, dwarfing everything around it. It was a symbol of Adrian's world, a world so far removed from her own. He took a deep breath. And then you came, with your $3, your unwavering kindness, and your belief in a complete stranger. It wasn't a calculated move. It was an instinct that told me this is the kind of person I need by my side. Someone with genuine compassion. Someone who sees past appearances. Someone who can rebuild what was broken. That day, you didn't just give me $3. Alara, you gave me hope. You reminded me what truly mattered. And yes, it became a test. But not of your character. That was already clear. It was a test of my own judgment, to see if I could trust that instinct, if I could trust you with a vital role in my life, both professionally and personally. A bitter thought crept in. Was this just another phase of his test? Would she arrive? only to be turned away or subjected to some further humiliation designed to amuse him. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Despite Miss Albright's professionalism, the memory of Adrian's initial deception was a fresh wound. She was stepping into the lion's den, not knowing if she was about to be offered a feast or devoured. But the alternative, remaining in her current struggle, perpetually behind on rent, constantly battling to make ends meet, was far more terrifying. She swallowed hard, squared her shoulders, and walked towards the gleaming entrance of Vance Tower. This wasn't just an interview, it was a battle for her future. And she was going to fight for it. The polished marble floor of Vance Tower's lobby reflected Alara's anxious gaze, mirroring the daunting height of the skyscraper above her. The air hummed with hushed conversations and the soft click of expensive shoes on stone. Everyone seemed to move with a purpose, a quiet confidence that Alara, in her simple attire and churning stomach, distinctly lacked. His hand reached out, gently cupping her cheek. "I fell in love with your kindness, Alara. And with every day since, with your strength, your integrity, your brilliance, I've fallen deeper. I orchestrated this entire scenario, not to deceive you, but to protect a genuine connection from a world that often values appearances over substance. I wanted to build our foundation on trust and truth, even if the beginning was unconventional." She approached the reception desk, a sleek, minimalist structure manned by a woman with an impeccably coiffed bun and a smile that seemed permanently affixed. "Good morning," Alara managed, her voice a little breathy. "I'm Alara Vance. For Miss Albright?" Alara's eyes welled up. The mystery that had shrouded him, the wall between them, crumbled in that moment, replaced by profound understanding and an overwhelming rush of love. The truth wasn't a betrayal. It was a testament to his desperation and his desperate search for something real. The receptionist's smile didn't falter, but a flicker of something unreadable crossed her eyes. Yes, Miss Vance. One moment, please." She typed something into her computer, then picked up the phone. "Ms. Albright, your 9 a.m. arrival is here. Ms. Vance." "Adrian," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. A few moments later, a tall, slender woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and an air of quiet authority emerged from a discreet side door. Ms. Albright. Her tailored suit was flawless, her expression calm, betraying nothing. "Ms. Vance," she greeted, her voice as smooth as it had been on the phone. "Thank you for coming. Please follow me." "Alara," he countered, his thumb stroking her cheek. "I love you. More than I ever thought possible. Will you? Will you be mine?" Alara's heart pounded as she followed Ms. Albright through gleaming corridors, past glass-walled offices where people worked intently at computers. The silence was almost oppressive, punctuated only by the distant hum of machinery and the soft footsteps of Ms. Albright. It was a world light years away from her cramped apartment and the noisy coffee shops where she often worked. Tears streamed down her face, tears of joy and relief. "Yes, Adrian, 1,000 times. Yes." They entered a spacious conference room, bathed in natural light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. A long, polished table dominated the room, surrounded by ergonomic chairs. Ms. Albright gestured to a chair. "Please make yourself comfortable. Mr. Vance will join us shortly." He leaned in, and their lips met in a tender, passionate kiss, a kiss that sealed not just a promise of love, but the culmination of a journey that began with $3 and an act of pure, selfless compassion. Mr. Vance Alara hadn't expected him to be present at the initial interview. A fresh wave of nerves, tinged with a familiar resentment, washed over her. She sat down, clutching her portfolio case like a shield. Weeks later, the news of Lily Chen's quiet resignation spread through Vance Holdings. No one knew the exact details, but her departure was abrupt, and the air around Alara finally cleared of resentment. Alara, now standing firmly as Adrian's partner, both in life and in the vision for Vance Holdings, thrived. Together, they launched new initiatives, focusing on social responsibility and nurturing talent from all backgrounds. The company became a beacon of innovation and ethical business practices, a testament to the values Alara had inspired. Just as her palms started to sweat, the door opened, and Adrian Vance walked in. Today, He was the epitome of power, a perfectly tailored dark suit, crisp white shirt, and a tie that probably cost more than her rent. His dark hair was neatly styled, his jawline sharp, and his eyes, though still intense, held none of the weariness she'd glimpsed in the alley. He looked every inch the formidable CEO. He offered a small, almost imperceptible nod to Ms. Albright. Then his gaze met Alara's. For a fleeting second, a hint of something unreadable, perhaps apology, perhaps anticipation, flashed in his eyes before settling into a professional neutrality. Their love story, born from an unlikely encounter, became a quiet legend within their circle, a reminder that true worth lies not in wealth or status, but in the kindness of one's heart, the resilience of one's spirit, and the unwavering belief in humanity. Ms. Vance, Adrian said, his voice deep and resonant, taking the seat opposite her at the vast table. Ms. Albright took a seat to his right, notepad in hand. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more tales of unexpected love, justice, and triumph over adversity, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay with us for the next one. And while you're here, check out our other videos. There's always more to explore. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Alara straightened her shoulders. Thank you for offering the interview, Mr. Vance. She kept her tone polite, formal, betraying none of the turmoil she felt. Adrian leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table. Let's be direct. Ms. Vance, your portfolio speaks for itself. Your unique blend of artistic vision and technical proficiency is precisely what we're looking for in our new digital design department. However, he paused, his gaze unwavering. I understand our unconventional first meeting may have left you with certain reservations. Alara gripped her portfolio case tighter. This was it. The moment of truth. It was certainly memorable. Mr. Vance, she said, choosing her words carefully. I won't deny that I was deeply upset by your methods. Trust, for me, is something earned, not something tested through deception. Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. You are absolutely right to feel that way, and I take full responsibility. My actions were born from a place of deep cynicism, not malice. However, I believe true character is revealed in how one reacts to adversity. And your reaction that night, your immediate, selfless generosity spoke volumes. It was not just the act itself, but the clear absence of any expectation of reward. That, Ms. Vance, is a rare quality, especially in my world. He pushed a tablet across the table towards her. Your designs are excellent. We're discussing an accelerated integration into our team, potentially even a senior designer role if you prove capable, which I have no doubt you will. We believe your fresh perspective could revolutionize our marketing campaigns. The salary, benefits, and growth opportunities reflect that. Alara's eyes widened as she glanced at the figures on the tablet. It was more money than she had ever dared to dream of, enough to pay off her mother's medical bills, secure a comfortable apartment, and finally save for her future. It was a life-altering sum. I'm prepared to overlook your unconventional approach, Mr. Vance, Alara said, looking up from the tablet, meeting his gaze directly. If you are prepared to show me that your trust, once earned, will not be betrayed again. Adrian held her gaze, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. A fair demand, Ms. Vance, and one I am committed to upholding. He leaned back. Now, let's discuss your vision for Vance Holdings' digital presence. Adrian, who had been watching her approach through the slits of his cap, felt a surge of unexpected amusement mixed with a pang of guilt. Her confusion was palpable, and her dignity, despite the situation, was unwavering. He decided to lean into the absurdity, to push the boundaries of his act. As the interview progressed, Alara found herself surprisingly at ease. Despite Adrian's presence, he was sharp, demanding, but also genuinely interested in her ideas. Ms. Albright, too, asked insightful questions, her demeanor professional yet supportive. It wasn't just a job offer, it was a conversation, a genuine exchange of ideas. By the time it ended, Alara felt a cautious optimism blooming in her chest. The shadow of the test still lingered, but a new path, bright with possibility, was beginning to emerge. Alara stepped into Vance Holdings on her first official day with a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation. The previous week had been a blur of paperwork, orientation, and a whirlwind tour of the sprawling digital design department. The sleek, modern office space, filled with buzzing energy and state-of-the-art equipment, was a stark contrast to the cramped, under-resourced environments she was used to. This was it, her fresh start. The chipped ceramic mug felt surprisingly warm against Alara's trembling fingers, a small comfort against the morning chill seeping through the cracked window of her tiny apartment. The aroma of instant coffee, thin and watery as it was, did little to invigorate her spirit. Another stack of overdue bills lay on the counter, a silent, relentless reminder of the chasm between her dreams and her grim reality. She sighed, tracing the worn pattern on the mug. Today was the day. The blind date. Her direct supervisor, a pragmatic and seemingly fair woman named Sarah Jenkins, greeted her warmly and introduced her to the team. Most colleagues were polite, some even friendly, offering smiles and brief welcomes. But Alara couldn't help but notice the subtle shifts in expression, the quick glances, the hushed whispers that followed her. The story of her unconventional recruitment, inevitably, had begun to circulate. Alara wasn't naive. She knew what people said about blind dates, especially those arranged through well-meaning but often misguided friends. Yet a desperate flicker of hope ignited within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, this could be a turning point. A stable job, a reliable partner, a lifeline she desperately needed. She looked at her reflection in the smudged mirror. Her eyes, though shadowed by fatigue, still held a spark of resilience, and her simple, borrowed dress, though a little tight, accentuated her unassuming grace. She didn't have much, but she had her dignity and a boundless well of kindness, qualities she hoped, perhaps foolishly, would shine through. Among them, one face stood out with undisguised scrutiny: Lily Chen. Lily was undeniably talented, a senior designer whose portfolio was as impressive as her perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes. She was ambitious, driven, and had been widely tipped for the very senior designer role that Alara had been fast-tracked into. Her eyes, cool and assessing, followed Alara's every move. Lily's initial greeting was clipped, a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to Vance Holdings, Alara," she'd said, her tone dripping with an unspoken challenge. "It's certainly an interesting way to get a job here, miles away, in a penthouse office that commanded a panoramic view of the glittering city." Adrian Vance adjusted the knot of his expensive silk tie. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling glass was sharp, impeccably tailored, and utterly unyielding. Adrian Vance, the name alone evoked whispers of ruthlessness, unparalleled business acumen, and a personal life as guarded as a Fort Knox vault. He was a titan, a predator in the concrete jungle, having clawed his way to the summit of the corporate world with a singular focus, profit, and control.